I watched Taken 3. I'm not dumb. I knew going in that it's probably not going to be good.
Welcome to Fridays on the Fly, episode 19. I'm Eric.
And I'm Ward. We are creative people with creative projects. Sometimes we talk about them. This episode, you are going to get to hear 2 stories I wrote, and you're going to get to hear Eric react to them, hopefully not in shock and disgust.
Do you want to do a first things first and get
I do have a first things first.
Okay.
Have you ever jump-started a car?
Of course.
I figured you hadn't. I got to jump-start a car today.
Was that your first time?
No. But it brings me back to my first time. I can't remember the first car I ever jump-started. But, you know, my dad had a shop. I knew how to jump-start cars. So I remember in high school, a friend of mine, his battery went down, and he needed a jump-start. You always have this kid who knows everything about everything, but they really don't. And so before I get into that, when you were jump-starting a car, where do you connect the jumper cables? I mean, specifically. Do you go battery to battery? Do you go battery to frame?
I connect to the car that's running, the negative first, onto the negative battery terminal, then the positive onto the positive battery terminal. Then I go over to the other car and I connect the negative terminal to the body of the car, some type of metal part on the inside of the engine bay. And then I connect the positive to the positive terminal on the battery. That's what I normally do. Sometimes I can't find a spot, especially on newer cars, to get that negative battery cable onto the body. So I just put it onto the negative battery cable.
I go battery to battery. So anyway, in high school, this kid's like, oh, you have to connect it to the body of the car. I know that works. And I didn't say anything because I'd already said, just connect it to the battery, it'll be fine. So of course, these kids always speak with this authoritative tone. This is the way you do it when they have no idea what they're doing. So they do it. And I don't know why. I have the jumper cables and it connects to the body of the car and it starts smoking.
To the body of the car?
Yeah, I don't know how or why that happened. Okay, I was like, hey, that's a good idea, bud. Why don't we try my way? And of course, that one worked, but I always think about that. Do people know how to jumpstart cars nowadays?
Why not? Why wouldn't they?
People don't know much anymore.
What's amazing is I went to go jumpstart my van when we were on vacation last year. I went to hook it up to the other guy's car. One of the terminals, the positive or negative, but it wasn't there. It was like this whole new system that Cadillac had where it's not a regular battery and the plugs aren't in the normal spot. So we had to actually look in the instruction booklet to find out where they were.
Yeah, because they have a remote post or something.
Yeah,
right?
that's what it is. It's a remote post, right?
I sold Cadillac, so
okay.
Every now and then we have to jump them. And first time I'm like,
where is this?
Yeah, remote post.
So I had no idea. I'd never come across one before. But yeah, jump starting a car. And yeah, I've done that a couple 100 times. Step 1 is make sure the cars aren't touching one another.
I like to hook to the battery and then take the cables and go.
I used to be so scared of that as a kid. And my dad's like, it's 12 volts. You're okay. He's like, look. He would touch him to me and I'm like, oh. He's like, see, you just get shocked. Because he would check the battery maybe. He would arc it. He'd get a big screwdriver and touch the terminals together. And then he would touch a terminal to touch the alternator to get the alternator to jump. It always frightened me as a kid.
As children were taught to run away from fire and sparks and electricity.
No, my dad was the kind of guy who was he would buy a car. We would have to get the car back to the house, but the car didn't run or didn't have seats or anything. So I'm 12. He's towing the car. I'm driving the car that's being towed, sitting on a milk crate, trying to stop the car because you've got 10 feet of cable. And when he stops at a light, you have to stop this car that doesn't stop very well. So I've bumped his bumper more than a couple times at 12 years old and him getting mad at me. I'm like, what are you getting mad about? I'm 12.
The milk crate slipped.
It's not like the brakes work perfect on this. I've never driven a car. Let's get on to the short stories. What's the first short story called?
I've got a project update.
Oh, props. Gosh.
I'm rocking and rolling here.
Whew.
This is through my work, what I'm getting to build for work, and what work is going to let me keep and pay for is what's crucial. You know Jenga.
Of course.
Have you ever imagined a giant Jenga?
I've actually seen a life-size Jenga before.
Well, you're going to be seeing another one.
The one that I saw was made out of 2x4s.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing?
2x4s. They wanted 2 stacks, 3.5 feet tall. We put them together. That's a 7-foot tall Jenga stack.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I've never seen one of that. Why would you put them together? You shouldn't put them together.
Why
wait. Did you do this mathematically?
No, I just determined a height that I like. The event's going to be 2 teams stacking Jenga 3.5 feet tall.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I thought you were putting those 2 piles together and making something 7 feet tall.
For me,
that doesn't make sense.
My videos, I am. I'm going to get me a helmet and have some fun with giant Jenga.
Into some Jenga?
Yeah. I'll be calling you too. I know you're going to be into that.
I see a lot of pain coming from that.
Because I thought, it'd be fun to knock that down. I'm like, wait, Those are 2x4s. They're going to pack a little bit of a punch.
Yeah, if you land on one wrong.
Yeah. It was like, hey, you got to do what you got to do for the video.
Yeah. Oof.
YouTube demands me knock down giant Jenga.
Wow.
So.
Well, it's not hard to make this Jenga thing. I mean, see, I thought you would have taken the time to be like, okay, regular Jenga pieces are this size. Let me get the exact scale, right? Let me scale this to human size.
Yeah, again, work's paying for materials. It's my time. So I was like, 2x4, so I just scaled it up based on that. And
for that, you have to get some really straight 2x4s.
Well, it depends on how well you want to do it.
Wow. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So you're going to be part of like the playing Jenga?
No, I'm part of the building it.
You're not invited to the games.
They formed like a little subcommittee at work where you had to come up with an idea.
Right.
And that was my idea. And of course, people liked it. And which I liked. At work, I'm like, oh yeah, Ward, he'll have good creative ideas.
Right.
I'm glad they realized that. Not just some mindless drone. Yeah, so we did giant Jenga. I'm like, well, I'm thinking.
Wait. Why wouldn't you talk them into the car wrecking thing? Everyone come on out. It's going to be $2,000.
The event's for middle schoolers, though. So
what middle schoolers wouldn't love that?
There's some liability issues there.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I talked them into it. I'm like, I was thinking you guys pay for it. I'll build it. And when we're done, I'll just hold on to it. They're like, okay. Can we have it back? I'm like, yeah, I'll be happy to rent it to you in successive years. No problem.
You give it back to them, though, if they wanted it.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Actually, I was thinking, after I film my video, do I really want a 7-foot tall stack of Jenga? I'm not sure I do. I'll just hide it in a back room at work somewhere.
How long will each piece be?
10.5 inches.
7 feet. Well, that's if they can make it that high. It's going to be, oh gosh, it's going to be
hard. Need a step ladder just to get to the top of that bad boy.
It's going to be hard. Jenga pieces, have a certain smoothness to them. So unless you're going to...
No, it's pretty much just going to fall down as soon as you pull the first one out.
Each piece. Well, no, you get middle pieces first. You'll be fine.
Can't get it out. The whole thing come crashing down.
We just wasted $200 on this.
No, it's 18 2x4s, 40
that's not bad.
some odd dollars. Yeah, price is good.
What you have to do is make a small stencil out of one of your for sale signs and call it like Wardenga.
That's good. Well, I was thinking about putting
you can spray paint on each one.
I was thinking about putting Woodworks on it, but I was like, well, it's a my work event. I don't know.
No. Yeah, Wardenga.
Yeah, I could
something like that. Something little wordplay. Make a small one, spray paint it on every one of the blocks.
I like that.
Yeah.
They already have a woodwork stencil already made, so that would save the making.
I know. But it's too big because you're going to be doing 2x4s. You're going to be sitting up flat. You want it to be on the side of each one. So now you're going to have to make a new stencil. When you do this, make sure you film it overhead. I'm
going to have video of the making, of the putting up, of the knocking
I meant
down.
of the stencil because the stencil's cool. And people will dig that. But you got to definitely come up with a name. I don't know what it's going to be.
I'll think about that. Yeah, next couple of weeks, giant Jenga.
I'll come up with a name.
Do it.
Let's get into the short stories. Or do you have more project updates?
That is all I've got for right now.
I've got none. I guess I'm just still working out.
How's that vanity project going? So these two stories, one is one of the very first ones I wrote when I got back into writing short stories, and that is called No Money Down. And the other one is Crazy Eight, and it's just a story that, I don't know, of all the stories I've written, I always think about it. I just really like it. And I really want to make a short film out of it. Though that poses a few issues. Here they are. No Money Down. I'm not saying I'm a smart man, but when I look at this paper, I see that you have no down payment, as you asked, and I gave you what you wanted for your trade. The price is close to what you wanted, and the payment is practically there. We are this close. Take your car home. Ryan smiled as if in on an inside joke while nudging the pen closer to Mr. Stinnett and rolling back in his chair. Ryan had made his move. Mr. Stinnett's brows looked like two wiggling caterpillars as he struggled to reach a resolution. He gazed through the plate glass window at the burgundy sedan gleaming in the sunlight as it occupied two spaces in front of the building. Ryan could see the yearning in his adversary's eyes and knew this deal was in the bag. He had placed his trap carefully each step, and now he glanced at the car and back to Stinnett for effect. Here it comes. This is the best you can do. I've been to the manager twice. This is the best I can do for you. That is, if Ryan wanted to make some money today. Stinnett gingerly reached for the pen as if it was a ticking bomb, but Ryan knew it was a charade. Touchdown. I'm going to take your paperwork to the finance manager so you can take your car home. I'll be right back, Ryan called over his shoulder. Ryan always brought the customer in quick despite the manager's objections.
He didn't want Stinnett to get any ideas while waiting for the manager to cue the deal. Better to keep some pressure on. Ryan went back out and decided he should sell Bowers on a warranty. No need to have the finance guy tilt the deal for himself at Ryan's expense because Stinnett wouldn't cop a warranty on the back end. Finance managers are crooks. On his way to deposit Stinnett in the manager's office, Ryan saw Billy on his knees next to, quite likely, Methuselah's mother in an apparent prayer pose. The guy really would do anything to sell. Quickly, Ryan diverted Stinnett's attention before Billy came into view. Antics like that are bad for business and fuel the stereotype. Ryan deposited his human paycheck and took the car around back to clean up. As he stepped toward the main entrance of the building to survey his lot, he saw Ray and Vic leaning against opposite sides of the railing, forming a knotted M. "You must have hit a home run on that guy. He looked like he'd eat kitty litter out of your hand if you asked," Ray drawled. "Hardly made anything. What little traffic I get has bad credit." Ryan knew enough to never brag on a deal. These guys would curse you before you were out of earshot. It was part of the game. Tolerate the customers and then avoid these barbarians. "You know, Bryce quit this morning, right?" Vic said. "This is only day 2. Why'd he quit?" Ryan asked. Ryan already knew. He had filled Bryce's head with rot last night. According to convention, of course. Ryan remembered his second night when Billy did the same thing, telling him to find a better job and to run while he had a chance. No one wanted an extra hand taking a slice. If Bryce couldn't handle it, better to quit now than steal a few deals on the way out. "You know, kids, dumb as your customers, I suppose," Vic laughingly said. Ryan put on a half-hearted smile. Someone was always pushing. This was a mental game more than anything. A den of lions was vying for the prize. Ryan's radio crackled. "Ryan, call on line 3. As he stepped inside, he heard Ray mutter, "How does he get every single call?" While every salesman was supposed to get equal turns with the sales calls, Ryan knew that wasn't the case. Flirting with the receptionist and running the occasional errand helped his cause. He was the best over the phone anyway. What's wrong with helping the business? "This is Ryan. How can I help you?" The voice on the other end sputtered. I want a used 4-door Mazda. Do you have any?" "Nice choice. Mazdas have been flying off the lot. Let me check my list here. Hold on. It looks like we just got one in this morning. I don't have any info on it, but let's see. Now, I don't want to make you wait as I look. Are you calling from home or work?" Work." "And the number there is?" It worked. It nearly always worked. Ask them for their phone number and they would balk, or come at it from an angle and they'd fall for it nearly every time. Ryan set up an appointment for the afternoon, telling the phone there were a couple cars that matched its needs. Ryan hadn't actually checked the inventory. There was a butt for every seat, Ryan thought, and he was just the one to mate them. All it took was persuasion. Ryan was detailing Stennett's car as it occupied the handicapped space in front of the building. He felt it always looked good for him to be there shining it up as the customer came out of the building to see his or her new car. Appearances are everything, after all. Many salesmen would take this juncture in time to get the customer to sign a form, as required by management, agreeing that the salesman had shown them every possible gadget and knob on the car, and he or she couldn't be happier if it were Christmas. But you see, Ryan never had to. He always got the customer to sign it while still in the office. The customer wanted to drive away, not sign more paper. The way Ryan did it, everyone was happy. Ryan would tell them whatever they needed to hear, and then give them the proverbial pat on the rear as they left.
What was the name of the story again?
No money down.
No money down. First thing I thought, for probably the first 30 seconds, I didn't know where we were. I was like, where are we? I obviously knew, I got where we were. It's your experience selling used cars or selling cars in general. I don't know if you sold used cars or new cars.
I sold everything. You want it? I got it.
So you're Ryan, clearly. You were going through how you sold things and how you made things happen and how you felt. One of the things I didn't like was it was a lot of technical talk about some, and I don't know any of that. I'm trying to think of some of the things that you used at the beginning of the story. Do you remember how it goes?
Warranty.
No, I get warranty. No, but there were some technical terms. You could tell it was car salesman jargon, where I was like, okay, I don't know if I fully understand that term because it's car salesman jargon. I'm trying to think of the part with the customer. And that was one of the things I had a hard time was keeping up with who was who. Right at the beginning, I was like, yeah, and I'm like, who's just what? Who's that? that took me a little bit of time to catch up with who everybody was.
Well, in that segment, it took me a minute. I recorded this a while ago. I wrote it 4 years ago. So I feel like I have to apologize and say, hey, this was the first short story I wrote coming back. It gets better because my first thought was, I don't really like it.
It's not good. Yeah. It's not your best one. It can be good. I think if you did it from more, you were in and out of your mind sometimes, and that I didn't like. If you made it completely straight from your mind, like these are your thoughts, and that's the whole story is your thoughts as you're going through the process, that would actually be kind of cool, because when you were talking about getting like to sign the thing and what you were thinking, I'm sure that's exactly how you feel as a car salesman. And that is like I hate that moment of buying a car where the person goes, oh, okay, well, we've got you to your down payment that you wanted. We got your payment right for every month. So all you do is sign the paper. I hate that moment. And I don't know how many times you've had that moment as a person buying a car, but for me, it's agony.
What makes it agony? Well, hey, they got you your down payment. They got you everything. What more could you want?
Because you go into it as a person buying a car kind of arrogant already. Like, all right, I'm going to tell them that this is what I've got down and this is what I have a month. And then when someone actually meets that figure, you're like, gulp. All right, now I've got to pay these people. So I think that's the hardest. They made my numbers. Why did they make my numbers? Like that's the question you're asking yourself. If it were that easy, let's knock another $20 off this monthly payment, That's what I'm thinking as a customer. Thank goodness I don't deal with that anymore. You can either make it work or not. I'm gone if you can't.
Being a car salesman, at this point, it's like, hey, if they can meet my price, like I know what I want to pay, what I want to get, so they meet my numbers, I don't care. Even like buying cars from private people. I was on a run of buying a few cars years ago. So I was like, oh yeah, I want to see you negotiate. I'm like, I'm not negotiating. He named his price. I like it. We're done. I'm not going to waste time on that.
Right.
I'm like, if they meet my price, I'm happy. But yeah, you said going back and forth and out of the head. Yeah, I found that really intrusive in this story.
Yeah.
And it didn't help. Because I'm like, man, there's so many, not necessarily jokes, but almost kind of like behind the scene type things. Like I tried to land. I guess they were kind of like jokes. So I tried to land. I'm like, oh, that didn't land. Because in the very beginning, the guy's talking about this guy who's buying the car. His name is Stinnett. And then I hear the name Bowers. I'm like, what in the? I was like, oh, I see what I was trying to do. This is what I was trying to convey. Admittedly, it did not work at all. But the salesman thinks so little of this guy, he can't even remember his name. It didn't come through at all. It is what it is. But I'd like to think I've gotten better than this. I sure hope so, because this one was...
No. Oh, well, the first two stories... The first time we did this, the stories were both good. So this one, yeah, it's just... Thank goodness you were not expecting me to be like, yeah, that was awesome, because it was not. Clearly.
Yeah, I feel the need to apologize, because it's like...
I don't think you should apologize. I think you should rewrite it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not happening.
I never go. It's like, I've written it. It's done. It's...
Yeah, but you can make that so much better.
The only thing I do that is a second chapter. I mean, that story's there. It's done.
You're not a rewriter. That drives me crazy. Once you write something, it's done. Like you're done. So if somehow you could write everything and then I can go back and rewrite it a little and then then we could co-direct it, that would work out great.
Yeah, it's funny because that gets into a project idea I have coming up.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, that story, there was nothing in it that I really loved. I'd like the internal. I would love to know internally as a car salesman what you're thinking constantly. Because I guess I never thought about you guys not making any money on a sale. I
hardly ever made much money.
What?
I had one really, really good sale.
So how do you make money?
Well, I mean, you make some money, but I probably typically made a few hundred on a car.
Okay.
Best one I ever did, I think I made like 1,000 on a car.
Wow.
But that was a confluence of events. Like part of it was usually you get 25% of the profit. On that car, I got like 35% of the profit because it had been around a while and they were doing incentives.
See, and that's something I would have liked to know because I have no idea.
That is good to know.
See, that's what I mean. If you could do that internal thing where it's like, all right, 25% of this profit is going to be, I'm going to make $100 of this car. I can't give this guy any more off or whatever. That's stuff I would want to know. Because
sometimes you get into factory rebates that aren't really for the customer, they're for the dealer. So it's like, okay, we'll sell you this car at invoice where in essence, I have no profit, but since there's like $1,000 factory rebate from the company to the car dealership, it's like, okay, I get 200 out of that. Not bad. This one guy that he worked there a day and a half, he thought that 25% was on the price of the car.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, man, I can't wait till a Cadillac. I'm going to get $12,000. How are you going to get $12,000? Well, it's a $48,000 car. If I say I get 25%, it's 25% of the profit, dude.
I would have just let him go.
You said Cadillac, you're going to get like 400 if you're lucky.
I would have let him go.
Next day, he was gone.
I clearly didn't understand.
Like, who hired you? What did they tell you?
Apparently they sold you. Oh my gosh. Getting back to the story, the internal dialogue.
It's not even engaging. Like, so much of the story I'm thinking, don't care. Don't care.
I try to focus, I close my eyes, focus on your words, and yeah, that one wasn't your best. All right, so you want to do the next story?
Yeah, just parting thought on this one. Yeah, I do like it because it is very representative of my time selling cars. I mean, a lot of, I feel like I kind of shoehorned everything into that one little story. So it's kind of neat as a travel back in time type thing. Yeah, not a great story.
Crazy eights. When I was an adolescent, I guess about 8, I worried about being crazy. Mentally unstable, institutionalized, that kind of stuff. Not the typical fears of an 8-year-old, but my grandmother and great aunt had chemical imbalances and schizophrenia, respectively. So I was afraid I'd carry the same thing. The look in their eyes when my mom would make me visit them was downright terrifying sometimes, especially since Mom wouldn't even let me be around them unsupervised. Did I have that to look forward to? Would I proclaim I was a prophet Christmas morning when the whole family had just woken up and was opening presents? Or would I create strange scenarios that never happened, like people breaking into my house to try my pants, yet putting them back to try and fool me? The fears of 8 don't often make it to 12. There were times when it was okay to see Grandma because she had taken her medication. Other times, we visited my great aunt in rehab. Life continued for us all. My aunt and Grandma entered nursing homes, and I only visited on holidays, if then. My fears fully ebbed, and instead, I tried to find excuses not to go. The old people's smell and how she wouldn't recognize me anyway were my common complaints. At 18, when they had both been gone a number of years, I was in a car crash. It wasn't my fault. I didn't think of them or see them at the pearly gates while I was out for 3 days. None of that nonsense. But all the doctors marveled at how I had survived. They told me I should have died. When I had the strength to look in the mirror, I agreed with them. Nurses marveled at how quickly I recovered. A real miracle, they called it. That experience worked on me, though. I couldn't get it out of my head. I defied death. It makes you feel strong. I thought about dying, my reservations, and I decided if it was my time, I'd go. Yeah, I'd miss out on a lot. I'd rather not. But when it's time, I'll go. Nothing will stop me until it's my time. In my first year of college, and in a particularly depressed state, I stabbed myself in the stomach with a table knife. It hurt. Actually, it was unreal. It didn't just slide in like in the movies either, and it was the most severe pain I can remember. I did it because I wanted to know if now was the time. I mean, maybe my ideas weren't far off the mark. As I lay on the floor bleeding, I passed out. When I awoke, I felt a quick pinch of pain, but I wasn't dead. The self-inflicted wound had disappeared, and a slight scratch was all I saw. Was I going crazy? Did that really happen? Maybe it was crazy that ran through my veins. Maybe it was something else. I'd have been labeled crazy if I told anyone about this. That one instance didn't quite convince me. So one night, I rode in a car with a few of my friends. More accurately, acquaintances. Rob was drunk. Too drunk to drive, of course. Out of the 4 of us, I was the only sober one. So I sat in the passenger seat, didn't buckle up, and away we went. It wouldn't be time. The next morning I woke up in the hospital. I was informed my 3 friends were dead. We weren't really that close, and I wasn't that upset. I had lived, just barely, so they said. I didn't spend long in the hospital. The nurses couldn't believe how quick I was discharged. But that's because they didn't know. It had to be true. Somehow, it wasn't my time. I couldn't always have been like this. I had plenty of injuries as a kid. They didn't rapidly heal. That was the start. Being young and invincible, I trolled the mean streets. I saved a convenience store clerk once, was shot in the process, and played it off as the bullet just grazed me. I actually went on to date the girl for a while, but it ended badly. It always does. I suppose it's due to my paranoia and introversion. She complained I didn't open up, which was true. I'm never good at maintaining friendships. The people in college I knew, I don't call them. They don't call me. Sure, I tried to keep in touch at first, but it felt one-sided, so I quit. I didn't know how it worked. These wounds and injuries, they didn't disappear instantly. It was more a rapid healing. A stab wound became a scratch, a bullet, a pockmark. I kept the scars, and there were a lot for my endeavors. I'd been hit by a car, crushed, strangled, electrocuted. You name it, I've done it or had it done to me. I got into mountain climbing just so I had an excuse for all of these scars. My body looked like paper that had been erased a few too many times. I had a gift. Sure, I knew that. But just like life, I was sure it was fleeting. I just didn't know whether it would end with my life or earlier. And how would I know? That worried me. What if the next time my throat was slashed, it didn't heal? What if my immunity to death had a threshold? I reached that, and I'm not Superman anymore. I didn't want to see my powers spray out of my neck. I'd gone through life guarded, afraid I might end up crazy. Half afraid I'm already crazy. And now I have to worry about dying. The one fear, the universal fear I had put behind me, had now resurfaced. I used to be ready, prepared. But now I'm starting life, and I don't want to end it all just yet. I don't want to lose the power. I have to guard it. To protect my power, I quit protecting the streets. Yeah, I felt bad about it. But if I'd lived, maybe I could figure out what made me tick. I couldn't do much to help people if I was dead anyway. The next year flew by. Before I was even fully aware of it, I'd graduated college, gotten a job, with my own cubicle and a computer linked to a community printer. I bought a compact car that got 48 miles per gallon, and I rented an efficiency apartment. Sometimes I'd remember my college years when I was invincible. I wasn't sure if I was or not anymore. I was afraid to test it. I didn't feel gifted when hitting the alarm with a groan at 6:24 every morning. Going to work, coming home, same thing every day. There's no risk involved, just mindless monotony. I was afraid to risk losing this? Would it be a big loss? I was an adult. I had to be responsible, I told myself. I had a girl, and we were making plans. Well, she was making plans. But still, I couldn't jeopardize this. Risk was for the young. But I'm only 28. Is that so old? I just can't die yet, and I'm too afraid to test it. There is no answer. At this rate, I will go crazy. I'd have to just deal with it all. And as I sit here in this little car, heading to Orson's restaurant to meet Michelle, I have to wonder, was I meant for more? Should I have continued to be a vigilante? I had more confidence back then. I was invincible. Now I just wasn't sure. I played it safe. Maybe, maybe not. I should have been a policeman or a fireman. Heck, FBI or CIA even. Marine Corps infantry. As my car quietly idled at the stoplight, I saw the lights. There was something wrong, but I couldn't place it right off. Wait. They were approaching rapidly from the wrong direction. I could do nothing but brace for impact and hope. I'm sure I had a stupid look on my face, one of surprise, remorse, longing, my fleeting hope, and my dawning realization. I look back and now I realize I was meant for so much more. All the things I could have done. Everything I did that doesn't matter now. I don't know how I got the power, but I do know how I lost it.
How did he lose the power?
Can't tell you. No, I'll unpack that once we get into it a little bit. But it's funny, this story, I don't know, something about it has always stuck with me. I've always remembered it. When I get to get into doing these videos more, I want to make a short film of this. Because, it poses some problems. And then, like, the car wreck at the end is a big one. But I was kind of like writing out the script. I'm like, well, I should go back and actually read the story and make sure like I'm remembering it right. I'm like, I remember it completely wrong. Like, what I remembered, the incident in the convenience store Like, that was kind of like the big moment. He stabbed himself in the stomach. He was, what? I wrote this? Didn't remember that at all.
It was a little
dark.
I don't mind dark. I love dark. It went on for some time, and I was like, okay, we got it now. We got it. Man, there's like such a good story in there. The beginning had me, like, about visiting the grandmother and the aunt, and you thinking you could be a psychopath at age 8. Yeah, that had my interest. Somewhat had me thinking, I wonder if he actually thought this. Did he have a grandmother? So is any of this true?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like, the whole intro was true.
This explains so much. I mean, I guess we all had strange thoughts as kids. I mean, I remember there's a lot of strange thoughts I had, but it seemed like you went from something that was true in your life and true thoughts that you had, and then took it into a story. Is that...
Yeah, that's
Would that
fair.
be accurate? You never stabbed yourself in the stomach with them?
Never did that.
Okay, yeah.
Never was a vigilante, never cheated death.
That's kind of where the story lost me. We went from something that could be really interesting to the prequel to Unbreakable.
It does fall into that a bit.
Oh, definitely. And that's what I thought you were really getting to. I thought this was the prequel to Unbreakable. This is him before we see Bruce Willis at age 35, you know. You're gonna tell us that story. So that's what I thought you were telling us. I love the idea of the story. I just didn't like it. Was too descriptive at one point. You know what I mean?
I don't think so.
I think at the point where you were saying you were doubting whether you still had the powers, that went way too long. The beginning, where I thought it was probably true, was really good. And the ending kind of had me too, because obviously I guess he died.
Yeah. So that's weird, because when I wrote the story, I'm like, okay, well, I still have some dialogue I need to add in here from him. It's like, I don't know, I'll just throw it in there.
Right.
But it's kind of a weird tense, because in essence he's dead, but he's talking about how he feels. But I'm like, I guess he could be in heaven. Sure, why not?
Well, yeah, he could just be... I never thought he was describing the story...
in the moment.
Yeah, right. So it could just be a story after he's dead. We could talk completely about your grandma and aunt right now, and I could tell you mine, but because mine are just as messed up as those. Actually, more messed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment.
My great-grandmother killed her son and blamed it on the daughter.
Oh.
And the daughter took the rap and went to a mental institution. Awesome.
Yeah, all right.
But
you can go one up on me.
Yeah, one
wow.
up you on that one. Whew. You really had those thoughts at that age? Well, when did you think you had those thoughts? Like you could turn out to be like, I guess, these mentally unstable people in your family.
I cannot pinpoint the age. I mean, we'll say around then.
Because you're definitely not normal. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's a difference between not normal and just really... And I can't remember when I had those thoughts, but I remember having a conversation with my parents about, well, if you are schizophrenic, you'd probably know by this age. This is when I'm like, okay, so once I get 22 or 23, then we'll know for sure. Okay, good, I got it.
Your basic thoughts were, I wonder if I'm like them.
Or if I will be like them.
Right.
I mean, at the time I knew I wasn't, but
right.
It's like, you don't know for sure until you're like 22. So that's why, this story kind of came back to college age when it really flipped, because it's like, was the guy crazy or?
And that's what I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if he was doing these things or if he was
imagining.
Right. Imagining those things. Right. And he was just thinking he was invincible. And it kind of actually reminded me of Birdman. It really did. Obviously was nuts and thought he was invincible.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I definitely like that. I definitely want to bring it back to, well, is any of this stuff sensical at all? And
I love that he died at the end, though. I'm all for that.
Oh, he had to.
Yeah.
Because he quit believing.
That's what makes the story so crazy. I think if you rewrote the middle part, it would be really good.
When I was thinking recently about this story, I'm like, this is a lot different from what I remember thinking it was.
It's a little crazy, but I don't see it as dark.
You stab yourself in the stomach, that's a little dark. You're getting killed, you're getting your throat slit. That's not Saturday morning cartoons.
These are all thoughts that are normal in my mind. So
yeah, when I went back to reread it, I was like, he stabbed himself in the stomach. Wow, what was I thinking? That's
must
crazy.
Have just watched Scream or something.
I know one of my inspirations was the video game Infamous. It's kind of like a comic book type, superhero type thing.
Oh yeah, I think I remember this.
I don't know my other inspiration, if anything. I mean, because the whole thing kind of delves into faith.
You think that's what it was?
I know, a big part of it was. Because, I mean, faith, you only have it as long as you believe you have it. I guess if I had to say, that everything that happened is real, the guy really was invincible for a time. But he's only invincible for as long as he believes he's invincible.
Yeah.
So as soon as he...
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. We got our first Christian movie.
There you
Guy
go.
stabs himself with a story. Wait a minute. Kirk Cameron, we'll call him. Sure, we'll be right in for it.
Great Christian movie, Kirk. You're going to like this.
You're going to love it.
Faith.
That actually is pretty good. I like that. I like that tie in there. Much better than the first story. Much better. But it could use some, I don't know what it was in the middle. It lost me in the middle.
Yeah, it needs a little bit of polish.
Yeah. Again, was this only like a write it once? I'm done. One and done?
I mean, how I work with all my stories is typically I'll get the idea. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to outline it. And then the outline quickly becomes, we've got scenes. And in essence, I just about write these stories in one sitting. And then I'll go back through and clean up the No Money Down story. I listen to that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this, this, and this. When I first started writing, I think, okay, this isn't quite right, but I don't know what to do. Well, I'm sure it's okay. But now when I write a story and I read back through, I'm like, this isn't quite right. I don't know what to do, but I'm changing it because if it's not right, it's got to change. So I just do it. So yeah, it's been easier to pick up on this needs to be fixed.
I feel like I should have like grades for these when we do them.
I
really do.
awesome. I like that.
I just don't know. I don't know. I was thinking, is it like an A, B, C scale or is it 1 to 10? What are you thinking?
Well, usually think grades, you think ABC. Well, I guess it depends on your baseline too.
I would start with the other stories, I guess. The
So it'd be
first
your
two
baseline.
stories. Yeah, the baseline
Okay.
for those. What's hard is I'm not sure that I've heard the best one yet. And I don't know, do you feel like you've given me your best one? Because the first one, which I can't remember the name of the story, but
Like
I remember
a few weeks ago.
Yeah, which was the one basically about the battle scene. What was it called?
Tango, Indigo, Tango, Lima, Echo.
Really?
Technically, yeah.
Oh,
And that is title.
right. So yeah,
Or no. Actually, I think I changed. I've had a few different titles for that. Maybe that's just
I don't think that's
Warrior
what you
Story
said.
or something.
Yeah, that one. Would you consider that to be your best story, or have I not heard what you consider to be your best story?
It's hard for me to say this is my best because
Oh, I don't think it's hard.
there's things I write and I come back to them like, this isn't bad. This
Yeah.
is terrible. And at the time, I'm like, hey, this might be something.
That one is easily a B plus, maybe A minus.
I mean, I'd say that one, in the grand scheme of things, probably ranks closer to the top than that.
Yeah, I would think so too. Judging by these four, I'd throw that one an A minus. And then the one that you told after that about the guy who was reliving like his life, in the mall, which I love that story. Like that's my favorite one so far, even though it's not as, I don't think it's polished as the first one that you told. That one's an easy B plus. I mean, the story itself, I love the story. I remember maybe not liking the end of it,
Yeah, you didn't
where
like
you
the
went
end.
with it, but all the way up to that point, I was hooked on that story. Then we'll go to the next one, the car sales, the sales thing. That's a D minus.
D minus? Not even a
minus.
D? You can't even get a solid D on that?
D minus. Yeah. No, you get D minus. And then this one, gosh, again, it had like good bones to it. Like I wanted to hear more about the beginning part. I guess I go B minus, maybe a C plus. We'll go C plus. I covered actually every grade right there.
You really
A,
did.
B, C, and D right
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I go C plus with that one.
Okay.
It was the first probably 20% of it where I really liked it. And then you lost me in the middle, and then you got me at the end again.
I really like the end on that.
Yeah, I like the end a lot. Actually, how you phrase the end is what really got me. And I asked you the question right away. It got me.
These two tonight are 2011,
Okay.
and the two the other week are 2015. Do you follow the stories on my blog?
It's hard to follow your stories on your blog. I have read a couple, but not many. Why? Are those most
I'm just
recent?
curious. I didn't know if those are current.
Those are current. See, and right there. See, 2011, they got the C and D.
Well, it's good to know I've improved over
Yeah.
5 years. I do an online story contest, and that due date is every other week, Friday at midnight. So when I'm posting my stories on my blog, they
They're
are
going
for that
there.
challenge.
Yeah, well, it's definitely gotten better. I mean, I think what bothered me most about the last two, these most recent two, were just how unnecessarily wordy they are.
Yeah.
You told me the same thing like 4 times in the first story, and I was like, okay, got it. I got that the first time you said it.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Make sure you got that.
you want to make sure that I knew that you were talking about. So yeah, they were a lot wordier where they didn't need to be.
Yeah.
And even though your first story that you told was very wordy, very descriptive, but everything was, you had to picture it in your mind because you were describing something with every word almost. Everything was very descriptive, and so I had to stay focused on it. This one, I didn't have to focus on it. I feel like I could I could miss the middle of the story and still pick it up at the end. It's a soap opera. I don't know if that helps you at all, but
No, everything helps. I mean, I always like to hear feedback no matter what.
it's funny that those were 4 years older than the other. Well, it's not funny. I guess it's good.
It is good.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about on those 2 stories?
No, my inspiration always problem is these are older, so it's hard to remember my inspiration. But the second one, the Crazy Eights, that one I can always remember the inspiration. I just remember I was playing Infamous and I was like Faith, and they just kind of came together. And
Why Crazy Eights?
8, 18, 28.
Oh, I like that. See, that didn't play up in the story for me.
I know I hit 8. I know I hit 18. I don't know if I came back to 28 or not.
I think you did. Yeah.
I may have.
But I didn't make the connection. I don't know how you could have made the connection there, but
I feel like some of these, if you read them, you kind of
you would see that better, yeah.
That has been story time on Fridays on the Fly.
That was a really good title, actually. Now that that's a really good title. But yeah, that's been story time on Friday on the Fly. Is there anything else we want to talk about in this episode?
I don't have anything, but we do need to do a top 3.
I did not think that through.
Because that is why people are listening to us.
They
want to hear the top 3. My first thought is top 3 video games or top 3 video game experiences, since the story is based on video games.
Oh, that's a good idea. We'll go top 3 video games. So we want to have computer games. Are those in
They're
there
video
too?
games.
Okay, all right.
They're games. There's video.
All right. Well, any arcade games as well. So those are all video games. Arcade, home computer, or any type of platform.
Wide open.
Wide open. So top 3 games you've ever played in your entire life. These are the best visual games, or just the games that you loved personally?
I might tweak mine to be just more like top 3 game experiences. Like I played this game and I was just like, wow, this is the future type thing.
Okay, mine are going to be probably more nostalgia. Like I played this game so long just because I loved playing it. So.
That's fine too.
All right, go ahead. Bet top 3 video games.
In series, playing Super Mario 64. It was like the first 3D game I played. It was like playing a cartoon, and it just completely blew my mind. Because I was used to Mario 3, where he goes to the right, he goes to the left, maybe he goes up if you're lucky. And playing 64, where it's 3D, is insane.
I don't remember it being 3D on Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
I had it. I just don't remember it.
Yeah, I just remember having this feeling like I'm playing a cartoon. I mean, because it looked good at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, better than anything else. And it was 3D. You could go anywhere. It's crazy.
Well, I'll stick with the same platform because there was a game that I loved on. Oh, no, maybe it wasn't 64. Might have been Super Nintendo. I had Super Nintendo. It was, where you fight each other.
Final Fight? Street Fighter.
Street Fighter. I loved that game so much. I knew everybody's moves. I knew every character, all their special moves, whatever. I knew them all. I played that game every day after school for hours on end. So yeah, Street Fighter, definitely. Chun-Li, it's my girl.
The first time I played Grand Theft Auto 3.
Oh gosh, that's a really good one. I never would have thought of that.
Because that's one of those games. It's like you can do anything. You can.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's a violent game and there's a lot of criminal activity, but to have the freedom to do that.
It was the first time that you got to play a car game, because I loved car games growing up, that you can get out of the car and move within a world anywhere you wanted to go. So was it Grand Theft Auto 3? Was that like the first? Yeah,
because Grand Theft Auto 2 was top down. I don't even think you could get out of the car. Like Grand Theft Auto 3 is when it was 3D.
You could cut loose.
You could pretty much sandbox to the truest extent. You could do anything.
I'm caught off guard now because that was such a good game. You could do anything. I love games where you're 2 people fighting. Street Fighter was one and Tekken was the other. I spent hours at the arcade playing that, but I'm not going to put that in there. I'm going to go with Madden. Any Madden past 98 to 2000. I don't know. I had 10 Maddens in a row. Probably from 95 to 2005. That's probably about the range I fell in. I just loved Madden. I wouldn't just go play the game. I would play like the little mini camp games within the game, the training, everything. I would do every step of the Madden thing. I would create my own players, create my own team, create the coach, create everything. I had a whole world.
Were all of them named Eric?
Pretty much. No, I would create my one player and he'd be the dominant.
Of course.
I always grew up like playing quarterback and stuff like that. I didn't want that though. I wanted to play linebacker. I wanted to be the biggest, meanest dude and just smash people in the face. Like it would be Madden. I couldn't pick a year, but I would say between 95 and 2005.
Number 3 is a tough one. It's between a game I could play endlessly or a game where I really first had a crew online that I'd play with that we'd like, all right, we're playing tonight, and we'd schedule stuff. So I'm just going to talk about both of them. I'm going to see if I can figure out which one. Civilization series. It's where, you build cities, you build a world. And I just like those strategy type games. I could play that game. Civilization Revolution is the one for the PS3. It's a little bit dumbed down, a little bit simpler. And it's nice because it doesn't take 40 hours to play a game.
Right.
I could play that endlessly. I really like that. But the game where I really started playing online with other people, Grand Theft Auto 5.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you could play with other people on that.
Oh, yeah. I had a group of friends where we'd kind of schedule it. And because, the game had the heist, and there's a big deal. With,
The last Grand Theft Auto I had was Vice City, I think.
yeah.
That was probably a long time ago.
That was 2002 or 3.
That was probably the last video game I really owned. Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Good game to own, though.
Yeah. So my third, oh gosh. I hate to not have a Mario in there because you played Mario until you won. That was a game you don't put down until you get to the end. Every day after school, that's one of those games that you just play because you want to get to the end of Mario. I'll go with something really nostalgic. I had Atari. Pitfall was like, if you loved Indiana Jones, Pitfall was like living it out in video game form. You're Indiana Jones. I have to go with Pitfall. Just a generic 6-bit system or whatever it was,
8-bit.
but 8-bit. But I loved that game. Gosh, I played it for hours.
And you're a big Indiana Jones fan.
Yeah, and it made me feel like I was Indiana Jones as a kid. There were games on that I can go back before Atari on my Commodore 64. It was a game called Bruce Lee, and these are dots on the screen. That's where my video game experience. That's where it started. Like a lot of younger guys, you're into video games. I was into video games the same way. Just when I was younger, we didn't have all this interactive and all these different platforms. I had my geek friends over, and they would bring out their big 5-inch floppy disks and bring it over, and they'd have, a new game on there that we'd play, and you could cut the little corner of the floppy disk to copy a game onto it. So you could cheat like the company, and, we were huge geeks, and, I love that whole experience. Bruce Lee, Commodore 64.
I'll have to check that out.
You can scrounge up a Commodore 64. You let me know, because my Commodore 64, first, it didn't have a floppy disk drive. It had a cassette drive. You put a cassette in there, and that played the game. Ducks Ahoy. That was the first game I ever had. Ducks Ahoy. Played it for hours.
Sounds like a great game.
The first football game I had, it was pre-Madden. It was on Commodore 64. So you'd pick your play by hitting one of the F buttons, the F keys. You'd pick like F1 to do this formation, F4 to make this happen. And then to make the play happen, you hit the space bar and you watch the play. There's no joystick or anything. You hit space and then the play plays out in front of you on the screen.
That's awesome.
Oregon Trail, that's a huge honorable mention because I played that for a very long time as well.
Super Nintendo Chrono Trigger.
I never knew that one.
It's probably the greatest RPG to ever grace the Super Nintendo. And that's one of those games I always have a hard time. Like the games I played back in the day, I can go back and play now. But if I didn't play back in the day, I'm like, these graphics are bad. There's a certain amount of nostalgia you have to have. And that was one of the few games that I didn't need nostalgia. The story was legitimately good. Not good for video games, but good story, period.
Oh, there was a really good story game, and it was called Stealth Assassins. Might have been the original PlayStation. You were a ninja. Your job was just to kill as many people as quietly as possible and to get to the boss, and just the stories and the graphics for that time and the time that they took to shoot these scenes were really great. And that was the first game. There was a game that was like one of the first games where you can play with other people on a system, and I think it was my PlayStation 2, maybe.
Sounds
it was
about right.
SOCOM, Navy SEALs. You're playing a person, but you can control 3 other people. I really enjoyed that game. We really got to keep these lists to 3.
We'll just edit all that other stuff out.
I think that'll do it for episode 19. Thanks for listening to Fridays on the Fly. I'm Eric.
And I'm Ward. Go to our website, fridaysonthefly.com. You will find our iTunes profile, our Stitcher profile, Facebook, Google+, Instagram, Pinterest. We have lots of social media profiles. Check those out. And let us know anything and everything. What you think, what your top 3 is, what you thought of the stories. Email me at ward@fridaysonthefly.com. And you can email Eric at fridaysonthefly.com. We would love to hear from you. And hey, you know what? You may just get a shout out on our podcast. The greatest honor you could ever have.